Buckeye Talk coming to you from the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. Nathan Baird from cleveland.com along with Doug Lesmerises and Stephen Means. This is our first chance to talk to Ryan Day since the game against Tulsa on Saturday to kind of get some follow-up questions. He said he wanted to look at the film, see how he thought the new defensive staff alignment worked out. Obviously, Kerry Combs moving up to the booth, not calling plays anymore. Matt Barnes coming down to the field and calling plays. But one of the more interesting things was we got to talk to Larry Johnson, the defensive line coach, and he was asked kind of how his role had changed, and he said, I was brought in, or I had more input with the run game this week, making it sound like almost like, I mean, Doug, from when you heard that, did you think it's sort of a co-coordinator situation, not in title, but like maybe Larry Johnson's coordinating the run game, Matt Barnes is coordinating the passing game?
Yeah, well, nothing fits the title, and the responsibilities don't match anybody right now. But yes, it feels that to me that if you really assigned it, what Larry Johnson was saying is maybe he's the run game coordinator, Matt Barnes is the pass game coordinator, but Matt Barnes is calling it on Saturday. But that when they're devising a game plan, Larry Johnson, he said, I'm more involved. I was asked to be more involved by Ryan Day. And so, to your point, Nathan, sometimes titles are malarkey, but Larry Johnson wasn't talking about a title. He was talking about responsibility. And he made it very clear that what his responsibility was against Oregon was different than what it was against Tulsa. And that's why I think it might be fair for us to assign the titles of maybe they kind of have co-coordinators right now with Barnes and Johnson.
We talked on the podcast about how Ryan Day had kind of put himself in this situation as far as the alignment of the defensive staff with some of the hires he made in the offseason. And you don't have as many bodies moving around on the defensive side of the ball from a coaching staff standpoint. Stephen, when you hear Larry Johnson describe that, does this make sense to you as far as like how to maybe break this up? And they say it's collaborative all the time. This seems like it would be a different distribution and where the collaboration starts to make a little bit more sense.
Yeah, I don't know if it makes sense. It's just what they have to deal with because this is the hires that Ryan Day made. He's in a situation where his highest paid defensive staff member probably has the least responsibilities at this point, which is never where you want to be at, but that's where they are now. Maybe his big – go ahead.
Kerry Combs has more responsibility than Parker Fleming. I just wanted to say that.
Parker Fleming is not a defensive coach.
He is a special teams coach.
He helps with the secondary. He also helps a little bit with the secondary.
Okay.
If we were putting coaches in columns, you would put Parker Fleming in a separate special teams column and not in the defensive column?
I think if you had to put him somewhere, you'd put him on defense, I guess. But that says something in and of itself. We've talked about that before. Why that hire was questionable to us.
Fair point. So to the point is Ryan Day's made some questionable hires, so now here he is, once again relying on Larry Johnson, not necessarily to fix everything, but to help out more, which that makes sense because run game coordinator, you're the defensive line coach, that kind of syncs up a little bit, which kind of frees up Matt Barnes and worry more about what's happening through the air and fixing this secondary, which, as we saw on Saturday, still needs some work. They fixed the run game. Can we get the secondary going now? So I don't know if it makes sense, but it's here we are, and they got to figure it out.
We know what else needs some help? Ohio State's pass rush. That's what Larry Johnson's supposed to be most in charge of, is getting the pass rush out of especially that four-man front, and it's not there right now. He was talking today about how they need to win more one-on-one battles. Ryan Day, I asked if it was scheme. He said scheme might be an issue that they have to look at. They obviously missed Zach Harrison from the last game, did not play against Tulsa. They're optimistic they'll have him back for Akron. So a lot of things kind of moving around there, but as Ryan Day was talking about last week, when I have to go be in the defensive room, that takes away from what I'm doing on offense. Maybe you could make the same argument that when you have to give Larry Johnson more responsibility to fix something on the greater defense, does that take away from how much he gets to work with the pass rush? And is that hindering the development that you want to see there? I think those are fair questions to ask.
I think the defensive line is more of a personnel issue, and some of it is because some of these guys are just young, so they just need more reps. But JT played great. Jack gets holding call. He draws holding calls even if they don't call it in the few snaps that he does play. Talik Williams obviously showed us that maybe he needs to have more of a role with this team. Tyreek Smith and Zach Harrison just haven't been getting it done right now. And so maybe it is time to see some of these young guys get a little bit more snaps, especially on passing down situations because they have flashed a little bit more. But then also some of this is on the scheme in the sense that they give up so much short stuff that it allows quarterbacks to get rid of the ball quickly, which impact your passing rush if a quarterback can drop back once and just get rid of the ball before a guy even gets into his rush. So it's a little bit of both, but more on the personnel. I think we just need to see more of these young guys on the defensive line.
Yeah, but Teron Vincent's a 5-star. Zach Harrison's a 5-star. Tyreek Smith is a borderline 5-star. I don't know what you mean by like it's on like the personnel. Like what does that even mean?
Haskell Garrett's a preseason All-American. Antoine Jackson was a highly ranked guy.
Like the guys aren't playing well enough. They didn't win enough one-on-one matchups. I think everybody would agree with that. But they should. I mean, I think in the secondary and at linebacker, you'd say, man, I think they're a step short on talent. They don't have Chase Young. I get that. But I don't know that anybody would look and say this Ohio State defensive line isn't talented enough. I do think some of the issues are Ohio State ideally wants to get 4-man pressure in a pretty simplistic way. They did get a little – I know some of the texters are pointing out, I think they got a sack off a twist, off a stunt. You know, you cross guys in the defensive line. Sometimes you do that. Now if you get hit with a draw, now guys are out of gaps and stuff. It's a little riskier, and most of the time Ohio State thinks, I don't need to do that. We win one-on-ones. That's what we do. We're Ohio State. We win one-on-ones. I do think maybe that's some of the stuff that you can try to do. But again, Ohio State is so used to having great talent that does win one-on-ones. I do think sometimes they are occasionally slow to adjust when they're not winning those, because I think there's a belief in the building of we're eventually going to win them. So Larry Johnson said against Oregon, their D lineman got chipped. He said against Tulsa, we just didn't win. So against Akron, I think they'll still try to win one-on-one. They'll put it on the personnel, but it's hard. Like, I don't know. Larry Johnson's a great coach. These are talented guys. So I guess I disagree with the idea that it's like the personnel should be good enough. Are the players playing well enough? No. But that just seems weird because Larry's good and they seem talented. And so that's hard to get your head around.
Well, I think that's been a hard thing for fans to get their head around because we're the ones who I think at times have said, hey, maybe, personnel is a little bit of this issue. And they're like, what do you mean? Like, we've got all these guys are really good players. Like, demonstrably, by any stretch, they're good players. And we know Larry Johnson can coach. How, it's got to be the scheme, right? It's got to be the defensive coordinator that's screwing up and causing these problems. And we've tried to explain that, like, even though that might – there does probably need to be some adjustment there, that those other things are an issue, and probably mostly just personnel, just guys winning those battles. I asked Larry Johnson today, a game against Tulsa, you would expect there to be just a load of champions coming out of that. There always is. Anytime they play like one of these, mid-major kind of programs, and they had like 10 champions, and none of them were like veteran defensive players really, or maybe like one. And I asked today, and he's like, well, my grading system's really tough, which may be true, but that hasn't stopped them in the past from having like a parade of champions from games like this.
Here's what I'll say when I say blaming personnel. Larry Johnson kind of detailed it a little bit. The idea that they're not necessarily following the technique to a T. You can't just bull rush a guy every single time and think you're just going to bully him to the quarterback every single time. Now, if I hear that, and if I go watch a couple of snaps, and that's what it seems like they're doing, they're not, as Chase Young like to put it, they're not drinking the Kool-Aid. They're just kind of, I'm going to stick with this move, and if this move doesn't work, well, then shoot, I'm just out. That's what I mean by personnel. So, yeah, they got 5 stars, and they've got top 100 guys, and they've got all preseason All-Americans, but are any of those guys playing up to what that title is right now? And if they're not, then that's a personnel problem. Even if you think that their ceiling is high, they eventually got to reach that ceiling, and all those guys are 3rd and 4-year guys.
I'm going to say one more thing. I would think between JTT, Sawyer, Vincent, Smith, and Harrison, I think those are 5 guys on the defensive line who are playing, who are all more highly rated recruits than anybody in the back 7. So those are all like top 35 national players in their recruiting classes. And so they don't have that playing elsewhere. They do have that playing up front. I agree with what you're saying. That it's – and sometimes you can lean on your talent. Because a lot of guys, when I evaluate – guys like Nick Benito or Will Anderson or even Kayvon Thibodeau, some of these national guys, they don't have the Larry Johnson moves. And it's like, great, you're fast and strong. What else? If they are falling into I'm fast and strong and that's not getting it done, they have to go back to the Larry Johnson toolbox and drink the Kool-Aid.
But it is circular, too. I mean, Ryan Day mentioned that, like, hey, if we get a little bit better coverage, too, that gives guys a little more time to get to the quarterback. The problem is, though, that what you're saying, that there's an imbalance of skill there, imbalance of talent there. So it probably is more just on those guys up front that they're going to have to start winning some more battles, because it's not going to be an issue against Akron, we don't think, but it's coming up soon. Maybe not even against Rutgers, but you start playing Maryland, you start playing Indiana, you start playing some other teams down the line, it's going to be a factor. Get the text, 614-350-3315, news and analysis all week from Buckeye Talk.